Welcome, Senator. Thanks for being with us.
Koki.
So, was it a mistake to go for health care first?
Well, I don't think it was. I think there is such a close interrelationship between the state of our economy and the state of our health care today that it's almost impossible to divorce them. So I know it's not politically correct to be thinking that you can do more than one thing at a time, but this emergency, this crisis we continue to face economically has such huge health repercussions, I don't think the president had any choice.
Well, I'm going to go back in history. In the spring of 2009, when it all started, the polls showed the majority of Americans wanted a health care reform, and the majority wanted a so-called government option. By the end of the year, the polls had turned around completely. What happened?
Well, Sam, I don't think, I give the president and the administration and all of those of us who supported health reform high marks for getting through this incredible maze. In fact, it's the only time, as both of you know, that it's been done in 100 years. So we have to look at the accomplishment in and of itself and say, well done. I think we could have done a lot better job on messaging. Now, part of the reason was, at the very last minute, as you probably know, all of the money that was taken, that was supposed to be committing to an education and a promotional budget, just as we did with Medicare Part D, which everybody is very familiar with, prescription drugs. We had about $1 billion for Medicare Part D promotion and education. That was phenomenally helpful in educating and instructing people as to how to do this with this whole new setup and benefit. We had $0 for promotion and education because they wanted to bring down the cost of the program, so there was no money for that. You can't do the kind of promotional and educational work needed to be done without resources. So part of the problem occurred for that reason. But all the way through this process, I think that those of us who supported it could have done a better job on messaging.
You talk about bringing down the total cost, and of course one of the ways that happened was the $500 million out of Medicare. Now that's for providers, I know, but that number really has a lot of seniors and boomers concerned. Should they be?
I don't think they have to be, Koki, because right now the United States, as both of you know so well, is spending far more, 60% more than the second most expensive country. We spend about $8,700 per capita for health care. Switzerland is the next closest, and they're at about $5,000 per capita. So we spend far more than anybody else. It isn't that we're not spending enough money, we're not spending it wisely. So to bring down those costs, we can do one of two things. We can cut and shift. That is, shift the costs onto beneficiaries like seniors or providers or stakeholders or hospitals, or we can redesign and improve. That is, bring down the cost by redesigning the program and getting more value out of the dollars we're spending. If we do that, that $500 billion is easily attainable. Not easily, but it's attainable in a good way rather than in a way that ought to concern seniors.
Well, I guess as long as President Obama is president, it's not going to be repealed, even if a Congress should come in and decide to do it. But perhaps the danger is the Supreme Court. They may take the case on an expedited basis, and during the election cycle, they could rule one way or the other about the mandate, which is the guts of the program. How do you think they'll rule?
I'm still very cautiously optimistic. If you look at past votes, if you look at past precedents, there's no question. What you don't factor, what you can't factor, are the politics. This is, in my view, one of the most political Supreme Courts we've ever had, and that political factor is one that we'll just have to wait and see. I don't believe, though, Sam, that it's necessarily as detrimental as some would make it out to be. There are other options that we can deal with. One thing people should know is there's going to be a mandate one way or the other. We have a mandate now. That mandate is that we all pay for those who don't. Every time we go into the hospital, we're mandated to pay those costs that again are shifted onto us. And so there's going to be a mandate. No one should be under the
Well, someone's going to have to pay the cost.
Somebody's going to have to pay the cost.
At the moment, I could drop my insurance and therefore not participate in cost shifting from the emergency room. But I'm talking about, as you will, because you're one of the architects, the mandate which would require all Americans in one way or the other to have insurance.
That's exactly right.
You know, you talk about the politics of the Supreme Court. One of the things that we've seen so much of is the politics all the way to extreme partisanship in the Congress. But after you all leave Congress, you seem to do quite nicely together. You and Senator Frist, who was the Republican leader when you were Democratic leader, he is a current physician. You've worked together on a lot of programs since the Congress. Why can't you do that when you're there?
Well, Koki, I think that's a great question, and I've thought about it a lot. You know, there's something about the cauldron, the Capitol and the cauldron today, that is very polarizing. Partly it has to do with the lifestyle. The plane is far more important than people realize. The plane allows everybody to leave on Thursdays and come back on Tuesdays, so there's less bonding. There is so much peer pressure from the bases and from fellow colleagues today to stay loyal to the ideological and the political mantra of whatever the issue may be. Money is driving a big part of it as well. So you've got a lot of factors that intercede. When all those factors are taken away, you've got common sense, hopefully common sense people that are looking for common solutions without those pressures, and you can do it. Somehow we have to deal with each one of those pressures. As you know, there are only 53 competitive seats now out of the 435. Only 53 are competitive because we've gerrymandered too much. The blogs and the cable media today are hyperbolic and become much more entertainment than news. All of those factors contribute dramatically to life in the Senate and House today.
And is there any hope for any of that improving?
Well, there has to be hope. I mean, we're all hopeful people, and you know, we've gone through cycles before. Our democracy has to adjust to all of these new factors, none of which existed 50 years ago.
Well, on that happy note, I want to thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thanks for